Good morning, Jan, and thank you very much for coming down to the Agri Forum at Blackpool 2016. This morning we're going to obviously have a quite interesting debate looking at issues that are facing young farmers. What are you hopeful to get out of the panel debate and the young farmers in the room this morning?
Well, I'm really here to listen. My current role is as an academic, but working with this type of department that I work for, our real role is to try to act as a link between changing practice and new innovation and ideas coming through. And sometimes that's technology, but actually sometimes that's the business models or the approaches that we take to doing business. And there's no doubt about it, we're going to have to continue to feed our nation for many, many, many years to come. But that we're perhaps on a cusp of a change where the cyber side begins to meet the more physical side, and that could revolutionise the way that we do business in agriculture. So it'll be very interesting to see from the young people coming through what they think the opportunities are and what help and support they think they might need to meet those challenges to continue to feed our nation.
Absolutely, and obviously innovating education is a good starting point, but that can sometimes take generations to filter through. Just touching on business models there, do you feel that there's because you do an awful lot of work within supply chain research as well, don't you? Do you feel that there's security within the supply chain for young producers that are coming in, or do you feel things perhaps weighted more towards the processors and retailers who seem to demand an awful lot of security than the products they're purchasing from producers?
So interestingly, and it's not just in farming, we've even seen it in industries that we think perhaps more established like automotive in the UK, that people have thought supply chain management is managing your suppliers. And so in a way, in agriculture in particular, it's been really fragmented. So you've had the producers or the processors putting supply on the growers or on the farmers, but then you've had the retailers putting pressure on the processors, but it's all very fragmented and not joined up. A true supply chain is end-to-end, and it starts with consumer demand. In a sense, if we really want everyone in agriculture to flourish, we need to be trying to balance the supply that's coming through with the demand for the products that the consumer really has. It's slightly more complicated in agriculture because the weather plays a big part. So sometimes you may have a surge of products, sometimes you may have a shortage, but I don't think people are really thinking about it, about balancing demand and supply. They're not really thinking about it in terms of consumers, and I think there's a huge educational piece that needs to happen so that the consumer truly understands the true price of the food that they eat. I think we've not done ourselves any favours selling food too cheaply, creating an expectation that we can have food at prices that are unrealistic. And for me, it's about how do we start by re-educating essentially the entire nation, right the way back from us in our everyday capacity as a consumer to actually think more responsibly about what we're buying, how we're buying it, where we're buying it, and to actually bear some thought that could that really be produced at that amount of money. And actually, we're seeing the likes of Aldi and Lidl really succeeding at the moment, and they're actually got a strategy of everyday low price. An everyday low price strategy is really good from a supply chain perspective because that starts to build some of that stability in, that if you could get the supply chain working end to end, could give those people at the growing end or the producing end some stability in terms of the demand that's coming through.
Absolutely, and with that as well, when you're looking to put a business model together or something like that, you need something to show your bank manager where your cash is going to come from. In terms of business planning and for young farmers, is it worth them going out and doing market research, looking at the end product, what they should be producing, what people want, not, well, it suits me to grow this, so I'll just produce it and hope somebody buys it.
No, absolutely, and actually we've got a research project that we're just about to start at Warwick, if we get the funding, which is called Beans on Toast, and it's actually about making beans on toast indigenous to the UK. So some climate change is actually working in our favour, and there's an idea that we could actually make haricot beans in the UK so we don't have to import our beans on toast anymore. But that programme, rather than the normal professor that would do this may have been in a vacuum, sort of just developed a bean, bred a bean. But instead he wants to work with us on the supply chain and business model side so we can go out and actually understand what would the consumer buy, how would it need to be packaged, what would it need to look like, how much would they be willing to pay for it, so they can almost breed a bean that we can then grow in the UK to actually meet a customer requirement. And in that way, even if you're a smaller producer, perhaps you've got to learn to make your environment work for you, but if you are a smaller producer in a more remote location, if you want to be competitive, you've got to be able to sell your product at a higher price, which means it's got to have some sort of value add. So rather than thinking, oh poor me, I've got a small farm in a remote location, I need some subsidy, think, okay, I want to farm, I've got a small farm in a remote location, how can I add value to my product so that I can actually cover the costs that it actually takes for me to produce in this place, and how can I actually create a product that consumers want and are willing to pay a premium for?
Yeah, I think there's often farmers need to remember there's safety in numbers, and they maybe don't want the neighbour to know their costings or whatever, but if they're in a group of 100 farmers producing a product, they can stand stronger together than 100 individuals perhaps.
Well, interestingly, and again we might just be about to do some work on the pork supply chain in Northern Ireland, where it's interesting, there's a processor who's currently got one big pork supplier who actually is probably it's the most amazing farms that I've ever been to, really great farmer, but he's sort of in competition with a cooperative of 30 smaller farmers, and in a way the processor would actually prefer to deal with that one big farmer because it's more straightforward, the quality is guaranteed, but also he's farming at an incredibly high standard. So I think we have to be very careful. There isn't necessarily safety in numbers. You could also argue if within those 30 farmers you've got some that are very good and some that are very bad, you could argue that the people that are not so good are actually making the good farmers within that cooperative less competitive. So actually perhaps it's more about being honest within a cooperative, running it as a business, understanding the relative strengths and weaknesses of the different players within the cooperative and playing to their strengths. So I am no pig expert, but for instance there's different stages in the pig supply chain, so perhaps different different pig producers, rather than maybe doing all stages in the chain, actually focus on a specific one. Maybe some of them don't really want to farm long term, so maybe there's a way that you diversify them or find a way of adding value to their product in the short term. But I think we can't lose business reality, and actually if you want to succeed in the long run and you want to actually run a farm that makes money, you have to run it as a business. That's not to say there may not be some individuals who wish to farm as a way of life, but then that's a very different way of farming to people who want to do it commercially.
Yeah, well thank you very much, Jan, and very much look forward to hearing your contribution to the debate later. Thank you.